The snatch and clean and jerk are the most explosive lifts you can do. You need strong legs, back, and arms, but a strong and stable core is the foundation of any explosive exercise. In today's video, I'm going to break down my top 5 core exercises for Olympic weightlifters that I've used with thousands of lifters to help them improve their technique and set PRs. And if you love learning about Olympic weightlifting, getting strong, and building muscle, then make sure to subscribe to the channel. First, let's cover why core work is so important for weightlifting. When we talk about the core, most people think about just the abs, but the core is actually the abs, obliques, and lower back. And they all work together to help you transfer power from your legs all the way up through the core into your upper body to help get heavy weights overhead. But once heavy weights are overhead, the core also helps to make sure that the downward movement of the barbell doesn't fold your body in half like a lawn chair. The first core exercise you can do to improve your Olympic lifts, especially if you're a beginner, is the weighted plank hold. This is a great option for weightlifters of all experience levels as it's easy to progress the weight over time, and it's a great way to practice bracing the core. There's 2 ways that you can perform a plank hold. You can either do them from the hands or from the forearms. For weightlifters, I tend to prefer them just doing them from the forearm, as our wrists tend to take a beating in normal weightlifting training, and it's just unnecessary to load it any heavier than that. Set up on your forearms, purposefully rounding your lower back to brace your core as hard as possible and pretend like you're not shaking the entire time. Now, if you don't have any friends or training partners, the next part, adding weight to this, can be kind of difficult, but the easiest way to do it is to put the weight behind your back on top of your lower back and hips. Then perform the plank as normal, trying not to let the weight sink your hips down over time. You can do these 1 to 2 times a week or as often as you'd like if core is a weak point for you. Now, when training the core for strength, I haven't found there much benefit to going beyond 60 seconds. I know some people love to do really long plank holds, but it's kind of unnecessary for Olympic weightlifters. Stick in the 30 to 60 second range for 3 to 5 sets and progress the weight on this over time. The second core exercise you need to do to increase your Olympic lifts is the hanging leg raise. The abs, just like any other muscle, need to be trained through a full range of motion. And while most of the core work that we do for weightlifting is focused on bracing and maintaining our position, training the abs through flexion and extension is easy gains for most weightlifters. To perform the hanging leg raise, it's fairly simple. Hang from a pull-up bar and lift your legs up as high as you can get them, then control it on the way down. Now, if you're new to this exercise, you may have a hard time keeping your legs straight throughout the full movement. And if that's the case, then try modifying it to a bent knee leg raise. Still going slow on the way down. At the top of the movement, aim to crunch your core together as much as you can and then slowly extend and get a full stretch at the bottom of the movement. Now, while this exercise is great for training through a full range of motion, it is fairly challenging to progress the weight on this. Sure, you can hold a medicine ball or a light dumbbell between your feet, but you are going to end up being capped on the weight for this exercise at some point, which means that you're most likely going to have to progress the sets and reps of this. So keep these in your training until you can get to the point where you can do about 3 sets of 10 to 15 reps pretty consistently without getting too sore. Then at that point, I mostly reserve the hanging leg raise as a core exercise to keep in my training programs during heavier phases of training when we're pushing the snatch, the clean and jerk, and the squat. I found it to be a little redundant to do heavy core work in that phase as well, and that's where body weight exercises can come in really handy. The third core exercise you can use to increase your Olympic lifts is the heavy carry. I love heavy carries as a core exercise for a few reasons. One, there's a ton of variations of them, which means that you can work on your specific technical weak points. You can also progressively overload them by using heavier weights, doing longer carries, or adding more sets. And frankly, they're just pretty fun to include in a training program. You can do heavy sandbag bear hug carries, aiming to carry your body weight or more for 100+ feet. You can do heavy farmer's carries, holding dumbbells or farmer's handles to help build grip strength and core strength. You can take lighter or moderate weight dumbbells or kettlebells and hold them overhead for overhead carries to help improve your jerk and snatch overhead stability. The hardest of the carries, in my opinion, you can do the heavy front rack carry, which is going to help build upper back and core strength for cleans, front squats, and jerks. Now, any carry that you do is going to work the obliques to some degree, but we can work the obliques even more by doing single arm versions of any of these carries. I recommend doing carries a lot as a beginner, as it's going to help build strength and workhorse capacity to get through harder training sessions as you get more advanced. But as you do get more advanced, you can still keep carries in your training, just keep them more in the GPP phase further out from competition. Try heavy carries in your training program 2 to 4 times a week for 3 to 5 sets of 50 to 200 feet, depending on the carry. The fourth core exercise you can do to increase your Olympic lifts, specifically lower back strength, is the GHD Hip Extension. To perform the GHD Hip Extension, set up in the pads with your hips on the pad. And the further out you can get your upper body, the longer of a lever you'll have and the harder it'll be on the lower back. Hinge down to get a full stretch of the lower back and round it, then extend and look up as you go through to get massive lower back contractions. Now, you can also progress this exercise in weight by holding a dumbbell against the chest, just like this. GHD back extension is going to build a ton of lower back strength, which as an Olympic weightlifter is super important because it helps you maintain your back position during the snatch and clean, as well as your back position during heavy squats so that you don't get pulled forward. But if you do get pulled forward, you'll also have the lower back strength to save the lift. Try these out in your training program 1 to 2 times a week for 3 to 5 sets of 10 to 15 reps and progress the weight on this over time. The fifth core exercise Olympic lifters need to do is the GHD Situp. If we're trying to build muscle, we need to train through a full range of motion, and the GHD Situp takes the abs through a full range of motion like no other exercise. To perform the GHD Situp, set up with your hips further forward on the pad so we can get a big stretch of the abs as we go down. Reach down, get a big stretch of the core, full range of motion, then come back up one ab at a time. By doing this, we'll be able to make sure that our abs are actually doing the work to pull us back up and not just our hip flexors. And just like any good bodybuilding exercise, we can progress the weight on this as well. Now, I would recommend working until you can get to 3 sets of 10 at body weight without being brutally sore the next 2 days before you add any weight to this exercise. But if you do, take a light dumbbell and hold it against the chin as you go down, and keep it there as you come back up. What I see a lot of people do when doing weighted GHDs for the first time is keeping it in a good position on the way down and then pushing it forward to help them as a sort of counterbalance and create some momentum to come back up. This is fine, and it's a good way to get some heavier weights on the eccentric, which will build some more muscle, but more than likely it's just a sign that you're not ready to add weight to this exercise yet. Give GHD sit-ups a try in your training program 1 to 2 times a week for 3 sets of 6 to 12 reps. And once you can get to the point where you can do 3 sets of 10 at body weight without any significant soreness the next day, then you can progress the weight over time. Those are my top 5 core exercises for weightlifters. And if you want to see how I use these in a training program, then check out my training programs linked in the description below. On the OlyStrong team, you'll get access to 3 or 5 day a week workout programs, daily video feedback on your technique, and unlimited coach messaging to ask as many questions as you'd like. If that sounds good to you, then click the link in the description below for a free week trial today. That's everything for this video. We'll catch you guys in the next one. Bye.